Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is episode 7 of this podcast titled You're Wrong, I'm Right. Um, I'm not the host because Cameron is tired of introducing each episode, so we're changing
And
it
I
up a
wasn't even
little bit.
supposed to be here this time.
I know this, so a little bit of backstory. This today's episode was supposed to be feature a guest. Um, our friend Justin who suggested we watch today's film um, was going to be with us last week to record an episode, but scheduling conflicts occurred, and so we're just proceeding on with Cameron, who's back from a little mini vacation that he had last week. So
Yes.
today we are going to be reviewing Da Five Bloods, Spike Lee's newest film that he directed and co-wrote that is on Netflix right now that you can go watch. Um, from the looks of the reception, it seems pretty divisive. There's people who really like it, and then there's people who are like indifferent about it. They don't absolutely hate it. Okay, there's some people that absolutely hate it, but
Yeah.
I find most of the reception I see is like kind of indecisive about it. So that's sort of that's sort of the main theme of today is Defy Bloods. Defy Bloods. So I think we will start. So who wants to go first?
Um, Robbie, why don't you take it?
Alright, I'll take it. So, backstory for a moment. Every year when a certain film genre is announced, like, for example, war movies and boxing movies, those are always the movies I'm most excited to see. Like, everyone gets excited about an upcoming Marvel movie or an upcoming Star Wars movie, but I'm always the guy who just wants to see a great war movie and see a great boxing movie. Those, to me, always have to deliver. And after being disappointed with 1917 and being underwhelmed with Dunkirk, I was really wanting to see the kind of like the next great war movie because I'm a massive fan of Hacksaw Ridge. That is probably my second favorite war film after Saving Private Ryan. I absolutely loved it. And so hearing Spike Lee was going to be making a war movie, I think this is his first war movie. I was super excited, and the trailer seemed very intriguing, and the man's carrying out Black Klansmen, and the film received like it's like at like a 91% of Rotten Tomatoes right now. People are loving it. A bunch of Oscar buzz. So like a couple weeks ago, I sat down wanting to love it, ready to love it because it's getting great reviews. And my God, did this thing drop the fucking ball? This is such a miscalculation on so many goddamn levels. We talked about Black Klansman, which, by the way, I do really like that film, but I think it was Bodhi's issues that you felt like there were like four different writers, and it felt like four people were writing this movie. This feels like it has four fucking writers on it. You have one group who wanted to tell this very intimate, unique take on the war film of these four guys coming back to Vietnam to kind of unsettle business that they did during the war. And then, about halfway through, it's like the writers decided to they watched Tropic Thunder while taking a snort of cocaine and just wrote the last half of this movie, not really giving a shit that it feels so fucking separated from the first half. Because when this movie started, I was into it completely. I loved the character dynamics. I loved the acting. The one thing I will really praise about this movie is what's his name? Delroy Lingo. Is that his name?
Ooh, fuck. I don't know. Hold on. Let me pull up the IMDb page. I usually do that.
The one soldier suffering from PTSD. He is fucking amazing in this movie.
He's
Like
incredible.
absolutely Oscar worthy. It was up to me right now. He'd have the Oscar for best actor, best supporting actor, whatever they would submit him in. Like all the character dynamics and the acting, it's like absolute A tier level. Like everyone is so good in this movie. And again, I bought the relationship, and I love the way Spike Lee utilizes aspect ratios. Like a movie that came out in 2019 that nobody saw called Waves came out, and that movie used multiple different aspect ratios to help tell its story in unique ways that really emphasize what was going on within the characters and their mindsets and everything they were dealing with. And I think Spike Lee's choice to use a 4:3 aspect ratio for all the Vietnam flashback stuff was such a great feeling because it looks and feels like authentic Vietnam war footage that you would watch back in the 60s that aired on TV, with great sound design. The action scenes in those flashbacks were exciting. It was nail biting. Everything about that was so good. And I think it's about like an hour and 15. The moment the landmine goes off, I went,
Yep.
fuck this movie. Because like it feels like Spike Lee and the other writers watched Tropic Thunder and decided to play it straight. Because so much stupid shit happens that makes no sense. The dialogue a lot of the time is garbage, is pretentious, so self-indulgent. It feels like the writers were shoving it up their fucking ass, thinking how smart they were, coming up with this bullshit. I don't like this movie. I don't. And it's just disappointing because I loved the first half of this movie, and the Five Bloods feels like it was trying to be Parasite, because Parasite does a significant shift where it does become a separate movie almost in its second half, but instead of it feeling jarring, it feels like a smooth transition to where there are multiple aspects hinting at what was to come, and in this one, it just comes out of fucking nowhere. Like, the moment these soldiers get the actual gold, like 50 minutes in, I was just kind of thinking, wait, we have another like hour and 20 minutes. What's gonna happen? And it turns out it turns into a fucking spoof parody almost. I don't like this fucking movie. I'll let you guys continue.
I guess I'll go next because I was
Right.
sort of the next person to watch it,
Go ahead.
and yeah, I have a similar opinion on with Robbie. I think it feels in the same way that Black Clans, like in certain aspects of Black Klansman, where it felt, in my opinion, a little bit disjointed in certain places. Here, it's even more noticeable. So, Robbie mentioned something about there being 4 different writers. And so the screenplay was originally written by... Oh, fuck.
Hold on, I got it for you right here. The writers are Danny Bilson, Paul DeMeo, Kevin Wilmot, and Spike Lee.
So Danny and Paul were the 2 original writers of the film. They wrote that, I believe, as a spec for Oliver Stone to direct this film back in 2016. And those 2 writers, if you look at their filmography, they're mostly known for creating the 90s Flash show. They developed and wrote that show back in the 90s, and since then they've worked mostly on like comic books / properties and like video games as well. And this was like kind of their first like screenplay in a long while. I think they've written other stuff I can't remember off the top of my head, but that script was originally written for Oliver Stone to direct, and I believe in 26, sometime after that, a little before or after Black Klansman was finished, Spike and his co-writer Kevin jumped on board to have that be his next film that he directed. So it feels like it's 2 different movies because the stuff that Spike, like the stuff that you watch, like with all the social commentary aspects of the film, obviously that's Spike. Like that's wholeheartedly 100% Spike's work, and he does a fantastic fucking job with it.
Yes,
But
I
that,
agree.
but the rest of the film kind of just like doesn't work because it doesn't feel like Spike is really interested in telling that type of story. Because like halfway through, they get, they accomplish what they're looking for. They get the gold. They find Chadwick Boseman's character's corpse, and so they're ready to come back. And then it just becomes like a completely different film once the landmine goes off, and it just becomes this like weird there, I don't know, there's like, it's so disjointed. There's like, so you have the 5 main characters. You have the 4 vets and Doroy Lindo's son, Kevin or John or whatever. He's there with them. He ends up going with them to find gold because he's like, oh, I want some gold, you know? And his father's just being a complete fucking piece of shit to him through and throughout. And there's also these 3 tourist characters. These 3, well, 2 of them are French, one of them's American, I believe. 2 of which are from Black Klansman, which I thought was really funny. Then you have Vin, who's the group's Vietnamese like tour guide throughout the country, who comes in and also joins in on some action shit. And then you have fucking, I don't know why there needed to be like a conflict, but there just ended up being like a conflict with like, so Leon the Professional's in this film, and he plays essentially the bad guy. He shows up in the beginning and the end, and like in between that you kind of forget that he's even in the film, because he shows up in the beginning to help the 5 of them get all the gold that they're going to try to smuggle out of this country. And he's like kind of like, he's like a character that like you might trust, might not trust, you know. There's a little bit of philosophical dialogue between all of them, and then all of a sudden like they go off and you kind of forget about him, and he comes back with like this like private like Vietnam army just like ready to just bust the shit out of them and like steal all of their gold. And I'm like, what why did this need to be here? You didn't need to have this like conflict, especially since the conflict is also completely separate from the other character. I can't, it's Paul, right? Paul's the one with the PTSD, correct?
Yes.
With like Paul ends up going off and like does his own thing, and like it intercuts between him in the jungle just fucking around and like basically hallucinating Chadwick Boseman and all this, and then the other conflict, which isn't as interesting, with the French, with Leon the Professional and his private army of Vietnam soldiers fighting the rest of the veterans. And it's just so like they feel so disconnected from one another, and it's so disappointing because like I admit the first half is really, it sets up really nicely. You have these characters who are really develop these characters and their beliefs and their philosophies, and you see Otis. He had connected with a Vietnam woman back in the war, and he ends up having a daughter with her. So his daughter is half black, half Vietnam, and they kind of go into that sort of philosophy a little bit, and then that like again kind of goes away until the very end, which I was a little bit disappointed about, because it's set up and then it doesn't really get paid off until the very, very end of the film, when he comes back and he finally like meets her and shit, which I thought was very sweet.
Maybe because maybe they should have had 4 fucking writers on this thing.
Or or the rewrite should have been much more concise. I don't know. I feel like
went, oh, that's in the script. Nah, fuck it, we'll leave it. But why? Nah, fuck it, I'm Spike Lee.
It's also interesting to point out, because the film was written with white veterans in mind.
Yep.
And then when Spike joined on, obviously he changed the ethnicities to black. And I think for what he did, that works fucking way better than it just being white boys again.
Yeah, it adds more personality to the film.
Because again, he also adds in the social commentary and sort of the history of, they sent a lot of black soldiers to Vietnam because white boys were draft dodgers, and they were like, well, we need to send people, so let's send them. So I really enjoyed that. I really liked that aspect, and I just wish that they just pulled through with more of that and not have to make it some dumbass fucking action film at the end. Like, that just ruined it for me. What else do I have to say about this? The intro is great. I still have problems with the way that Spike Lee edits his films sometimes. I really love the aspect ratio changes. I wish that they didn't have transitions to them sometimes, because they'll go from one shot of the present, and then they'll go to the Vietnam portions in the back, or in the as flashbacks, which are 4:3, and Spike does this animation thing with the crop bars, where it goes from 2-3-5 to 1 to 4:3. It doesn't look as good. Later on in the film, they kind of sort of give up on it. They just wholly go from 2-3-5 to 16:9 or to 4:3, which I think works way better and is a little bit smoother. But yeah, I mean, the weird thing is that I'm trying to think if Chadwick Boseman was marketed as big as he was.
He was.
Because he isn't. He's obviously his character plays a huge part in their history. But he's not in it too much. He does a really good job in it. I think one of my favorite scenes in the film was when they're kind of just relaxing after shooting a bunch of Viet Cong soldiers, and they're on the radio and they hear that Martin Luther King has been assassinated. And that segment was so well done. You really felt their pain and their agony at hearing this, especially when the Vietnam radio host is sort of getting into their minds, essentially. I thought that was very well done. There's things in this film I like, but it's just so disjointed, and I agree with Robbie. I fucking wish that they didn't have, if that whole hour was changed to something completely different, this would have been easily 9 out of 10 for me, but it's not, and I'm really disappointed about that.
My idea after Cameron goes. I know exactly how this movie could have been better.
Alright, so how I felt about the movie is also very, very, very similar to you guys. I went into it, though, expecting... Pretty much how I expected this movie to go was... I was expecting it just to be a group of old war buddies getting together again and going on kind of like a remembrance exploration. As they're going through, you see what made them who they are now, kind of thing, and it an adventure kind of movie. And it was kind of going there until halfway through, and then shit hits the fan, and one of the characters, which one was it? Eddie gets blown up.
Yep.
I think. And I was just like, oh, okay. Yeah, I guess I was waiting for that to happen. And then David steps on one right after that, and then we kind of just forget that Eddie just exploded. And
right?
David takes over the scene for the next 5 fucking minutes until we finally see them bury Eddie, and then they're just like, all right, bye. Or was it Melvin? No, it was Eddie.
It was Eddie.
And so it's just so their best friend, one of their best friends, just gets blown up to high hell, and then we forget about it. But then we see him get buried, and then they just walk on and just tell him that he's sprained his ankle, to then immediately go, but he didn't actually sprain his ankle. So it's like, all right, then what was the fucking point of lying, saying he sprained his ankle or whatever? Just there's just so much to this movie that I was just like, it could have just been done better, like, or something happened. I was just like, but why? I don't understand. Like, why was that a thing? It did not have to be a thing. I didn't know there were 4 writers on this movie, and now that I fucking know that, I'm like, well, that just makes so much fucking sense. You can definitely tell that they were just 4 minds trying to put one thing on paper, and it was just, this movie just felt like such a jumbled up and just non-coherent just mess, kind of. I really was not a fan of how it was put together. Like, a little bit over halfway through the movie, I started checking to see how much longer was left in the movie because I was getting tired of it. I was so let down because some of my favorite movies are movies where it's just character pieces with characters on adventures. Like, this obviously wouldn't be coming of age because they're all old as fuck, but like a movie like The Peanut Butter Falcon or fucking like Stand By Me, where it's a group of characters that you really get to know going on an adventure together and you find out what's happening. That's what I was going into expecting this, and then it just wasn't that. And so I was like, all right, I guess I can't be too mad that that's not what it was, but I'm kind of upset just what it turned out being. I was like, oh, if they were going to go for a war movie, they really fucking dropped the ball here. I thought that the acting I thought was great. I thought that I kind of wanted to see more of Jasper. I'm gonna butcher his last name, Pekonen, who played Felix in BlacKkKlansman.
Mm-hmm.
I really wanted to see more of him because I really loved him as Felix in BlacKkKlansman. And what does he have, like maybe 3 lines in the movie and then gets blown up when he's trying to run away?
Yeah, he doesn't play a huge
his character wasn't huge, so I'm not like upset about that, but I'm just like the 3 of those characters as a whole of that like group of finding bombs I thought was kind of stupid.
They could have been cut out completely.
100%. So that's why I was upset. I was like, if you're gonna put him in the fucking movie, make him interesting. Give him something. Don't just gonna give me some fat guy who stands on top of a thing and keeps lookout, and the other guy gets blown up as he's trying to run away because he's so fucking scared, and then some French girl to make an unbelievable fucking romance. Like,
oh my god, yes!
I don't
fucking hated
give
that romance.
a shit. I do not care.
I blocked that romance
like,
out of my mind.
Yeah, exactly. Like, Jesus Christ, I never thought I'd see the day where there's a worse fucking romance than Padme and Anakin. Because Jesus Christ, it was so bad.
Kylo and Rey was worse, but.
I would debate that, but that's for a different episode. Yeah, I thought the acting was good. I really did like how the characters, like the 5 Bloods, I did like how they interacted with each other and how you could tell like they felt like old friends, but just the movie it was terrible. It was genuinely, like, I just did not enjoy it. It just went off the tracks and went nowhere nowhere with any sensible, like, I couldn't predict what was going to happen essentially anymore, but not in a good way.
Yeah,
I was just like, what the fuck is going on? Mm-hmm. Make it stop. My eyes are going to bleed. Like, I don't like
again,
this.
Parasite does that shift to where you don't know what the fuck's going to happen in that last half, but it's not even remotely bad. Everything is so well executed.
And
because
it still fits.
Movie builds
exactly.
Parasite builds up to it though, like where you're like, something is off here, but like the entire time of this movie, I'm just like, yeah, that sketchy French dude is totally gonna fuck with them, and then he does, but then just like when it happens, it's just like, this is fucking stupid. I don't know what else to say. This is just dumb.
It just comes out of nowhere.
Exactly.
He only has like 2 scenes in the beginning and the end. He like comes back and he's just like, all right, I am the enemy of the film now. Time to get to the gold. And I'm like, fuck off.
The thing so bad. Liked that Spike Lee did was that I understand what he was going for with those Vietnam soldiers still having issues with the African American characters. I liked that even after all this time, there could still be legitimate tension, because in reality, that's how shit works. There would still be tension over the course of decades and decades and decades of time. But what they should have done is keep all of the violence within the past and make it more of a juxtaposition to how if the Vietnam people still wanted that gold because they consider it theirs, which I like that aspect of the story, that works. So if you wanted to keep it more as a debate and a political debate between the two cultures within Vietnam, juxtaposing the violence in the past, that would fucking work because you'd have interesting ideologies clashing in the movie, especially when Paul is suffering from PTSD and doesn't want anything to do with them, versus the other few characters who are trying to stay sane, keep everything reasonable, so they're kind of the dodging around Paul. That would have made a far more fascinating tale than the bullshittery we got with this. And even
And
with the
even
past stuff, it's like Spike Lee forgot that Chadwick Boseman's character was even in the goddamn movie because all the
Mm-hmm.
flashback stuff is fantastic, but they just drop it after a while. And then the next scene he comes in like 30, 40 minutes later, he's Paul's having this like weird hallucination, and you find out that he killed Chadwick Boseman's character, but it doesn't feel earned. Nothing in this movie feels remotely earned, and by the time you get to the final climactic moment and characters start dying, I just kind of sat back like I don't give a flying fuck, because it's done in such it's done in such a and like an anticlimactic way. Like I said,
Mhm.
in order to make that finale work, you need legitimate build up. The most build up you get is when they're looking for the gold. You cut to this wide of them going down the mountain. You see these two Vietnam soldiers kind of looking at each other and walking off. That's the most you get in this fucking movie. Nothing builds. And the thing I can't fucking believe right now, I'm looking at the reviews, and most of these from critics, A, A, 4 out of 5, 4 out of 5, B plus, 8.4, 5 out of 5. It's like, how is this a 5 out of 5 fucking movie? I don't understand. I like the topics and I like the politics Spike Lee is delivering because that's what he's best at. I like how Paul actually is a Donald Trump supporter. That's an interesting dynamic to have within this group of characters, but it doesn't really
Yeah.
go anywhere. Nothing in this movie goes anywhere by the end.
And like you mentioned earlier, because there's that scene when they're in the boat and they're in town, and Paul just has a moment. Um, he has a PTSD moment, and he's just like swearing off at a Vietnam salesman who like they
Great
have a
scene, by
back
the
and forth
way.
banter. That's a great moment of just like the prejudice that still exists within, you know, Vietnam citizens and um, black Vietnam soldiers, or really, any Vietnam soldier, but still, like, particularly for this film, um, the tension that still exists between the Americans and the Vietnam people who fought in that war. Fuck. This movie is such a mess.
It really is. I'm on the Rotten Tomatoes for it right now, and it's got a 91 certified fresh rating, but its audience score is a 54%.
Yeah, and
And
I completely understand why it is.
yeah, I do too. I I just don't like. I'm reading some of these reviews where it's like this one says "Da 5 Bloods" is the first movie I've seen since lockdown began that made me yearn to be in a packed cinema. It's like no, no, it didn't. Gave it a 5 out of 5. That makes no fucking sense.
Does
And
What
it?
like
about it?
again, the politics, like a lot of the praise this movie's getting is like Spike Lee understands the political climate of today, which I can't disagree with. The movie knows what it wants to be when discussing these type of issues, and all of those are done well. It's everything else, the way they decide to explore those themes are so fucking stupid.
Mm-hmm.
I just love how the two characters that have the most like development wise is Otis and Paul. Like of the four surviving blood members, at least in the beginning, they're the only two that I like remember who have like good arcs for the most part, especially Paul. Um, Eddie, I would say the other two are kind of forgettable. Um, like later on in the film, it becomes less about them. They're kind of set up well in the beginning, but then it just like kind of just goes away near the end, and then Eddie gets blown up by a landmine, and then his death is like unceremoniously just like, oh,
Blech.
fuck, he's dead. Because then David immediately steps in a landmine, and so we have like a 5-minute scene just figuring out how to get around the fucking landmine. And then they all go off, and then they get hunted down by the Vietnam soldiers, and then Paul fucks off and has his own breakdown, and then fucking the other dude, who I can't even remember his name, dies in the final act.
Which I didn't even know he fucking died from that grenade.
Yeah, I didn't know that either.
Oh,
it didn't even look
Melvin?
like it blew up. Yeah, Melvin. It didn't even look like he blew up from the grenade.
What do you mean? He jumped on it and he like bounced. That's what happened. You know, grenades aren't really that huge. Like, that's what soldiers are taught to do. If a grenade gets thrown, you jump on it, you absorb the entire impact of it.
Yeah, but I look
that.
away, and then he's just like dead. I'm like, wait, he died?
Yeah, there's a massive blood puddle underneath him.
Yeah,
like,
I
a few
realized
seconds
he
after it
died
happens.
after everything was said and done, but within that moment, I was just like,
Oh,
did
no,
he
I
just
agree. It's
die?
very jarring. It's super jarring because it just happens and then they don't acknowledge that he died. They're not like, oh no, my friend died. They're just like, fuck.
Like,
All right, gotta shoot somebody.
the
It's like,
entire
well, your friend
fucking
just died next to you.
the entire finale after Paul dies, when they're like locked down in this like fortress, and it just becomes this shootout. I was literally just sitting there like, what the fuck am I watching? Like, what is this?
Leon the professional comes in like, you know, Mr. 71-year-old kind of like, you know, big boy now, just coming in guns blazing. Like, what the fuck? What is this movie?
Yeah.
This
This
It's
movie just
so
feels like
bad.
such a massive miscalculation because, again, 4 different writers. There was like 5 different movies in this. It's 2.5 hours long. It didn't even need to be 2.5 hours.
So
No.
let's
Good God.
let's benefit of the doubt, because Spike and Kevin did not have the input of the 2 other writers. The 2 other writers were not involved in the rewrite. Spike and Kevin just went in with their draft and did their own thing with it, and whatever. Because one of the other writers passed away back in 2018, so he wasn't involved
really?
with it.
I didn't know that.
Paul, I believe it was Paul who passed away. Let me see.
Yep. February 26, 2018.
Yeah.
64 years old.
Yeah, he passed away, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Danny Blitzen was still alive. I don't think he had any involvement when he joined on to when Spike and Kevin joined on, so I don't think what was released, I don't think had much of an impact in Spike's draft. But yeah, I don't know, whatever Spike and Kevin decided to do, they didn't commit enough to it, because then they just have this other half of a movie that doesn't fit at fucking all, and I'm like, oh my god, this ugh.
The one thing I did
God
like
damn
about
it.
this movie, about the flashbacks, is I like how they didn't de-age them.
I
thought
love
Yeah.
that bit.
I liked that too.
I think it's like a good summation of the day they went to Vietnam, they never really changed. So them looking the same in the present is just kind of like that symbolism almost, that they are, like, at that moment, they're never gonna change again.
Mm-hmm.
Like, again, that aspect, like, I know a lot of people like complaining, why didn't they de-age them, or why didn't they cast younger actors? And my response is, The Irishman is a little bit distracting. Not terribly so, but The Irishman also costed so much fucking money to de-age 3 actors, so it wouldn't have been worth it to do that. And then casting younger actors is like, you already have those guys, and if that's the idea you're going for, just go with it, because I think it works in this movie's favor.
I think it works
Yeah.
really well. I mean, like, even in the first flashback, I didn't really notice it until, like, maybe the second or third one.
Yeah, it took me until about the 3rd or 4th where I was like, okay, they aren't. Like, because, like, I watched the first one, I was like, did they? Is that the same? And then, like, the second and third, I was like, it is, I think.
it
The
helps
fourth one, I was
that,
like, okay, yeah,
that
definitely.
Spike Lee did the action sequences really well.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They look fantastic.
they do. This whole movie, I think, actually, like it looks gorgeous.
Yeah.
I think it's technically
It's
speaking,
one of the best
it looks
shot
really good.
Netflix movies, I'd say.
Yeah. It's
Our
just
our
the
boy
story's
our boy
garbage.
our boy Newton Thomas Siegel comes back with a vengeance after
Yeah.
I'm just like, Days of Future Past looks okay, and then I'm just like, oh wow, fucking Defy Bloods, holy shit, like fucking this is like one of the best films that he shot.
Yeah, it's really good. I like how it looks, but
I'm not a fan of some of the modern day camera technology, like the gimbals in certain things, but I have a prejudice against gimbals in general, so
you're just jealous because you can't use them right.
I mean probably, but
Nah, it just
I'm
looks
kidding.
super artificial.
It does. No, I'm just messing with him because
Okay.
every time we've ever tried to use any sort of steady cam of anything, Bodhi, it just doesn't work out.
yeah. Yeah. All right, are we gonna go on our fucking final thoughts on this? Just disappointment of a film.
I mean, yeah, I guess like it did not need to be a 2 hour and 34-minute movie. It 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 had promise. The first half of the movie, I was like, this could be good. Because I believe Justin, the person who was supposed to be on this podcast today, the guest on it, he liked it. I believe
he loved it.
He
He really loved it. And I wish he was on because it would have been interesting.
I want to see that mind point, that where he's coming at. But I mean, I struggle to see genuinely where the people or the audience finds enjoyment in it from the second half on. I think it was the most shitty rigged, just slapped together, just this terrible ending to a movie. Their second half of a movie, it was. I genuinely did not enjoy it. The credits started rolling and I backed out of it so fast. Like usually after a movie I'll sit there and I'll watch the credits, but I just I saw the first name of the credits. I was like, boop, done. We're good.
Even the credits like zoomed by. It was just like Defy Bloods, directed by Spike Lee. It's just like
Spike Lee joint.
roll through.
And I was like, oh, okay. But I think I'm gonna give this movie a solid 3.8.
Wow, you're fucking. That's low.
That is.
I
Really
did
low.
not enjoy this movie,
And I totally get it.
It was. I went in excited. I went in with high expectations, and it just fucking dropped the ball. 3.8.
Oof. Well.
What do you go on?
Yeah, I mean, like, I feel like Robbie and I's scores are going to be pretty similar, I would assume. Yeah, the first half was really good, had a lot of promise, was hoping that they would continue on with those bits, even if there's some things in the script that, even in the first half, that's like, didn't need to be there, like David's fucking shoehorned in love interest. The French characters, they didn't need to be there. The whole second half is a goddamn mess. I don't know, I'd probably give it like I would give it a solid 5.7 out of 10. That's my score for today. I was highly disappointed with Defy Bloods. And, yeah.
So, I am praying to fuck that Mank is amazing so that this movie doesn't get a fuck ton of Oscar nominations, because at this point it's The Five Bloods versus Sonic the Hedgehog. Joking.
I watched that movie willingly. It's a bad movie.
Joking
Anyway,
aside,
continue.
I do think that Delroy Lingo deserves an Oscar nomination for his acting. Again, like nothing against him or like any of the dialogue he was given, because the man owned it. Every like wacky, like just snorting cocaine off his ass monologue as he's staring at the camera was like fucking amazing, even though I hated everything that he was saying because it made no goddamn sense. Um, I think this movie is just pure like mediocrity. Um, I'm gonna give it a 5. For me, because the first half is so strong, I can't just ignore everything that I did love. But I'll be lying if I said that I was barely watching it by the end. Like after the big gun, shootout conflict, I just kind of like messaging my friend on my phone, kind of like, dude, what the
Me
fuck is
too.
this movie? And he literally said that, is it just me or did it turn into Tropic Thunder? Like, no, it turned into Tropic Thunder. So they didn't know. It's like I said before, Spike Lee snorted cocaine, watched Tropic Thunder, came to the pitch room high off his ass, was like, guys, you know what we need to do? We should do Tropic Thunder, but take it seriously. And the writers went, okay. And Netflix went, ah, fuck
Yes,
it.
Mr. Spike Lee.
Our
And then
movies are
Netflix was
ass
like,
as
"Oh, we
is.
greenlighted you before you even got here."
Yeah, exactly. Like, oh, wait, Spike Lee's making a movie for us? Fuck it. Let's just let him do what he wants. Let him do what he wants. And they're like, Netflix, like, oh, fuck. Fincher, how's Mank going? And he's like, fuck off. And they're like, okay. But yeah, no, I can't give this movie more than a 5. This is a massive disappointment. Like, thoroughly.
Damn.
I don't remember the last time seeing such great promise just being thrown out the window. Because again, I'm not a fan of 1917, but that movie is consistent as fuck. This movie is far from that.
Yeah.
So what does that average out?
We have a
5.7.
4.8.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
So this is definitely the lowest scoring we've had.
Yep. I'm kind of shocked. Like, we all kind of felt very similar on that one, but our scores were kind of very far apart from each other.
I was
Like-
probably being a little bit generous with this because I was like,
Yeah, you dropped the 5.7.
Like,
I was like,
for me,
that's
like
almost a 6, dude. What?
the way I look at like scoring movies is every movie ever made starts at a 5, and it can either go down or it can go up from there. In this, when it starts, it's at such a high, and then it just drops to such a low, and like I just can't give it lower than a 5 because I did like a lot of stuff about it.
mhm. I mean, there's
saved-
great.
I
there's
say
great things.
everything below a 5 is just movies I genuinely just can't stand, and I can't say I couldn't stand the Five Bloods. It's just I don't like it, but there's quality here.
All I know is I won't be watching this movie again.
No.
Yeah.
There's nothing more. Why I gave it such a low score is there's nothing more that I hate in a movie than when something looks to be really good in the film itself, not even just through the trailer. Like, if it's a really good trailer and a shitty movie, it's like, whatever. But if it's really good in the beginning, and then they just take everything good that they had and toss it in the trash can and then just shit all over their script. There's nothing worse to me than that. It's
And
like
this isn't just like
you did
solid
yourself
turds,
so
it's
well,
like
and then you
diarrhea
fucked
shit
yourself.
they're shitting out. It isn't
Yeah.
solid.
So like, I just there's nothing more that I hate because then it's like, I start to think, oh, that movie wasn't that bad, and I'll watch it. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, no, it isn't that bad, and it's just giving you this false hope that this movie's gonna be good, and there's nothing more that I hate than a failure to deliver something that looked so promising.
I was telling myself I liked it. It was like after I watched Suicide Squad, I walked out of the movie theater and like, I did like that because this, and this, and then like over time it's like, no, Suicide Squad's such a big pile of fucking dog shit. I mean, this isn't as bad as Suicide Squad, but it's like same. I wanted to love it, and I tried to tell myself I did, but oh no.
Yeah,
Do
I
not.
wanted to love it so bad because I fucking loved Black Klansman. I was like, all right, Spike Lee coming off of Klansman, let's see what he's got. And he's got nothing. So yeah, Bodhi, you want to close it out this time? Do the honors.
Yeah. So thank you very much for enduring 7 episodes of us. Hopefully, by the time the 7th episode is, or at least by the time after the 7th episode is recorded, we'll have a few episodes out finally.
Yeah.
I don't know what we're gonna do next. I think it's either, I want to say Jaws, but we just went from Spike Lee to Steven Spielberg to Spike Lee to
Yeah.
potentially Spielberg again. So
Yeah, we should switch it up.
we might do something different.
We should just leave it a surprise.
Well, yeah, we'll leave it a surprise.
Yeah.
This is we'll figure it
We'll
out.
figure it out off
after
recording.
this. Yeah. All right. Catch us later in the next episode. Take care, everybody.
See ya.
Bye.